afternoon, depending on where you're at. My name is Paul Asnikar, and I'm with Alliance Solutions Group. We have been doing a kind of four-part series. Today's focus is on the Sage estimating, or Sage Timberline estimating, or I guess you could say formerly Timberline software. And along with this four-part series, what we've been trying to do is kind of dive into various applications that Alliance supports and implements. And last week was on we talked a little bit about the on-screen takeoff, on-centers application, being able to do some 2D takeoff. Today, again, is estimating. In a couple of weeks, we're going to have a BIM session on how we can integrate BIM basics, and also how we can integrate the Sage estimating into BIM world. And then we finalize a couple of weeks after that with the ability to talk about kind of the next generation of Sage Timberline and the enterprise estimating and its SQL back engine, and kind of the future of that. So, but today's focus is kind of on the basic estimating core elements. Again, my name is Paul Asnikar, and a little bit of background about Alliance. Alliance distributes above and beyond the estimating applications. We distribute Sage 300 construction, which used to be the Timberline accounting and real estate. Sage 100 formerly was Master Builder, and then the Sage estimating being Timberline estimating, and then some human resources application used to be Abra. And then what we also have along the way with the core estimating program, we have some feeder applications that connect up with our application, that being on-screen takeoff, PlanSwift. We have a few other ones that I didn't list that we connect up with the BIM world, and so it's kind of our main kind of bread and butter applications there. Currently, we sell into, we have customers between California, Florida, Texas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, and Nevada, and also some in the Caribbean Islands. We currently have 3 major offices, that being in California, Texas, and also in Florida. Today, we currently have over 4,000 customers with this product mix up here, and that we not only sell and distribute the applications, but we have consultants in implementing those applications. So a little background about Alliance. Again, my name is Paul Asnikar. Topic today is the core Sage Timberline estimating. And kind of what I'm doing today is I'm breaking the core estimating kind of into kind of 3 chunks, if you will, or 3 parts. The first part is what we call our Explorer basics. Then we get into kind of the estimating basics, and then we finish about, you know, the third part is how do we work with other applications, and how does Sage estimating drive data and also pull data from different apps. And so you know, the basic premise of our core estimating applications is we really kind of look at history and kind of being made in 2 different directions. And by the way, when I'm going through this today, we're going to keep everybody on mute, and at the very end of the presentation, we're going to try to earmark about 10 minutes. You can also, at the bottom right, send in some questions if you have them, and then we can respond that way as well. Sometimes the last 10 minutes, if depending on background noise, we may or may not be able to get to those questions, but we will certainly follow up with everybody after this presentation. So, but estimating kind of looks at kind of 2 main roads of creating data history and information. And one road is we talk a lot about Timberline's core basics, or it's a database spreadsheet concept, and where we put in your pricing, productions, and all that information. The other road of history that's being made is every time you create an estimate, there's some form of history being made within that application or within that estimate. So our concept is when you decide to bid that project, we can start tracking that information from its early stages to creating the estimate to funneling it downstream if you get the job into the accounting platforms. After I get through the basics, as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to talk a little bit, maybe even show some things if we have some time on being able to, you know, I guess probably the third concept is really it's a dynamic spreadsheet that lives on. You know, Excel's a great application, but when you look at this spreadsheet that's in Sage Timberline, is our concept with this is that once it gets into the spreadsheet, whether you're manually putting this stuff together, which is kind of the forte today within the core apps, or whether you're pulling this stuff from sending stuff to project, integrating into accounting, pulling stuff in from different 2D takeoff platforms or BIM information. We want to try to create that spreadsheet to be as dynamic as it can, and above and beyond just creating an estimate within the walls of the core app. So with that being said, I want to get into the core product. And everything kind of starts, if you look here, we call it Explore. The whole concept with that is kind of a Windows Explorer look and feel. And the whole idea is that we talk about two roads of history being made, and one road is that every time you create that file, there's some form of history there. And if you look here over on the left, there's a folder hierarchy, and you can create this hierarchy however you want, organize it. A lot of folks organize this by, hey, 2013, the name of the project, the estimates that were created within the project. And again, you can organize this however you want, but this would be tapped into either your local drive. If you've got multiple users, it would be sitting out on the server. And the whole idea is that if you look here, as I highlight a folder, I've got this information here, these estimates that have been created. So I can sort by file name, project type, estimator, estimate total. In addition to the columns I currently have turned on, you can also come over here under Select Columns and add your own fields. There's even definable fields that you can add to this above and beyond what Sage gives you. So the whole concept with this is, as I'm creating this estimate, we have a dynamic way of reaching back or proactively maybe using that estimate as a starting point, but we have a whole database of projects out here. So, and it's merely started by just going in here and saying, hey, I'm going to create a new estimate, and the little wizard opens up, and as I made that decision to bid on that job, I might come over here and say this is the ASG webinar, whatever the name of the project is. Main here opens up the cover page, and you can fill in some things. And we don't care whether you enter 2 things or 200 things. The concept with this is, as you fill stuff in, we also give you some drop downs. If you notice here, this can be definable. You can create your own drop downs, but I might come here and say office buildings. What's the status? We're bidding the job. If you want to give it an estimate number, what's the estimator? And as I fill in some basics about the project, as I'm filling this stuff in, I've got a database of ways I can go find that information. I mentioned as I'm filling in the basics here, we also have a way of tracking events. And it's also definable by the customer. If you click on here, you can see all the different, you can create your own. Hey, the bid is due. I'm going to come in here, and bid's due on the 5th. I can put some notes in here, give it a priority. When I hit OK, it just gets logged into part of the project. It's part of the events or tasks we need to do for that given job. The nice thing about this, and we talk about having that dynamic application that communicates and works with other tools out there, as you create this list of events that you're doing here, under File, you can export those out to Microsoft Outlook, and it lands into your calendar as an event. As I come back to the cover page, over on the right is we start talking about kind of that second row to history. And that second row to history is, as we create the estimate and set that in motion, we also have the ability, Sage Timberline's gotten very deep or dynamic with the way it looks at its cost database. They've gone to this whole tables concept. And again, I'm bringing stuff up to you today. You don't have to necessarily turn them all on at one time, but I can come in here and work in the same database and define a set of, maybe I'm working in prevailing versus non-prevailing. You have unlimited rate tables you can add or build in here. They can be by county, by state, by however you want to do it. And when I click on prevailing, it just sets in motion those labor rates for that. I can do the same thing if I have an equipment table. In addition to that, there's a cost index, production table, and price table. And the whole concept with that is, hey, maybe I have a prevailing wage rate job. I'm working in this city, maybe the production in terms of, the labor production, how many hours does it take to do a certain task. Maybe it's a hard job. And again, it's just, the whole concept with this is that, that in the price table, maybe it's a change order. The whole idea with this is that, when I get into the spreadsheet, you can change stuff all day long, and I'm going to show that. But the key about this is that these applications are built for maybe a junior estimator, project engineer, and some senior PM or estimator or owner of a company can pour all that stuff into a database and say a hard job, it normally takes 2 hours instead of 1 hour, and for a given line item. And what's nice is that I was a project engineer years ago, and these tools are built for people like myself, or at that level where we can leverage from the management's knowledge. And as I fill these things in, it just sets in motion the right information that we want to at least start with. And so, again, I talked about the database being very dynamic, and that's exactly what it's doing. And as it creates the estimate, it just dumps this up into here. Before I get into the second road and actually building up the estimate and creating that file, I want to go back to Explorer for a minute, and I want to just talk about, as we drop that estimate into this folder here, we've got the ability to do a search. And this, in the way we build up our estimates, it really tries to mirror, mimic what an estimator does manually. And what I'm trying to do is give you different looks and different ways the tool can be used. For example, I might start out and say, hey, before I even created that file, I want to go in and I want to look in the cover page, and I want to look by project type, and I'm looking for anything that was an office building, and say go search. And it goes across the server, regardless if it's buried under multiple subfolders, and it finds those projects. As I find the ones that I like, I can also view them right here on the fly without even going into the core estimating program. I can see, the totals. I can see a cost summary. We talk about the interaction with other applications. Heck, I can even dump this to Excel. So, and if I like this project, I can just copy and rename it and send it in motion as a starting point estimate. The beauty is I have information at my fingertips that I can go grab. I can run reports I can do charts. I've got this information here that, if I come in here and say, let's run a report and run a chart by project type, it'll reach out, pump out a report, and it'll give me a graph and everything on that. So I've got great key information and metrics that I can utilize, and just a couple examples. And this application has been really handy not only for, hey, I found something similar, copy it over, but it's been great for owners that want to blow in and say, find me all jobs that were schools. They'll find their top 5 projects, maybe dump it to Excel because someone else wants to work with it that doesn't have Timberline or whatever. So again, that's really that one side of history. Now, however I come over here, whether it was an estimate that I copied over as a starting point, whether I put estimates side by side and drag and drop, the basic premise of this application is really to open up here, and if you look, after the folder is created, the spreadsheet, I'm accessing the database. And again, it's a database spreadsheet concept. And if you look at this drop-down, it really tries the flow of how you build up an estimate. If I click on estimate information, I'm back to the cover page. If I come over here and I open up quick takeoff, I open up the book spreadsheet concept. So as the book is open, now I can go in here and say, hey, I want to go to openings, maybe I want to go to wood door, and maybe I want to go grab a couple items, and I'm just using the control button on the keyboard, and I just drag and drop them. And the whole concept is whether I'm dragging and dropping and finding the phases I want, I can also search. Hey, I'm looking for anything that was a door, maybe anything that was a metal door. I've got a dynamic database that I can find my information. And I really just want to go in here and say, I want that one right there. If you look here, as I search and I look for items, you'll notice under every given phase, there's an add new item. Our concept of the database is maybe you have a master that you draw from like I'm showing, and you bring in that stuff in. Of course, the benefit is you'd put your pricing, productions, you know, how much detail or little detail you want to put in there, maybe some default notes. All that lives in the database. Right down to maybe how you're going to job cost the project if you get it and move it on to accounting. So all that lives in there. But we also recognize that as you're working in this estimate, estimators that are doing their projects, they might want to change, you know, work with the spreadsheet. Maybe they realize that there's some stuff that's not in the database they need for a job. And I can just go in here in any one of these and, you know, hey, I'm looking for a marker board. Anything that says marker, that's not the size that I want, but I'm just going to go add this on the fly, throw it in the spreadsheet. So now I'm working with that whole database spreadsheet concept is where everything starts. And now I can come in here and say, you know, I have 2 of these. Maybe I want to come over here and I want to change this to, you know, $500. And if you notice here, if I come here to the right, oh, I really would rather put this column over here. Makes more sense. You know, if I come down here and I want to take 7 of those, I want to make that 80, or I'm not sure, make that 900. All I'm doing is working in a spreadsheet, manipulating numbers. I want to come here and I want a 10 by 10 marker board. We need 12 of those. I don't want to do them by square footage. I want to do them by each. And they're going to be 900 a piece. Or I'm not sure, I'm going to make that $15,000. And the beauty of this spreadsheet is I can hit the space bar all day long and my formula doesn't go away. But I have the ability to take information, add stuff on the fly, come over here and say I really want to add something else to this. Maybe I want to come over here and add a note. Maybe I even want to go clear up to the openings level and add a note. All I'm doing is I'm making it my estimate, and I'm not affecting the database. I'm just using the database as a starting point. I mentioned earlier how the database, we look at it being very dynamic, and one of the things that I'm going to throw out here is we look at the database as really a living, breathing, kind of growing thing, meaning, hey, I add stuff on the fly. You know, there was something I wanted to type in here. We need 2,000 square feet of that, and that's going to be $2 a square foot. As we're adding stuff on the fly, as we're changing descriptions and unit pricing here, the whole concept of estimating is that, hey, there's some good information in here that we might later want to go and update the database. And one of the things we can do is just come down here to pricing and say update database, save one-time items that were unique, that were just added on the fly, and throw them to the database. And we can uncheck or check. And same concept is true with existing items here. Under pricing, we can come over here and say update database from estimate. And so the items that we choose, that we see that have merit that should be changed, an estimator could be working in this spreadsheet, setting everything up, and when it's all said and done, we have the ability to update that information back to the database. Now, understand these commands here of updating, when I select this, I don't even see this screen as a user for the fact that as a user, because what happens here is that I have the ability to put passwords or security on it, and so I wouldn't even see the screen, but maybe the administrator, chief estimator, owner, all that kind of maybe level of person would have the database password. But the nice thing is I have a control way of working in that. Understand, estimating really tries to, instead of trying to come to you saying, hey, you know, you got to work in CSI, or you've got to work in this view here. The whole concept of this is that we give you the ability to work with a database, organize it however you want. The spreadsheet concept is much like the Excel, where I can say, really, I wanted to call this labor only. I really would rather move this over here, and all I'm doing is dragging and dropping. Maybe I'd rather hide the sub amount, you know. And as I roll to the right, you'll notice there's my total cost in unit, percent of total. But instead of trying to tell you which columns you have to use, instead of rearranging stuff all the time, we give you the ability to kind of set up your own views or looks. And that's just a command called spreadsheet layout. When you click on spreadsheet layout, you'll notice here there's a bunch of, you have unlimited views, by the way. But if I click on detail here, now all of a sudden that's a different look, and maybe it's a different level I want to work with. And if you notice here, we have production, cost per unit, hours, and there's more data. Maybe one estimator wants to look at it this way, someone else wants to, maybe the company-wide, you want to view it this way. But I can come in here and say change that to 3 or make this 24 hours. You'll notice now I have more data to work with. In addition to that, as I'm changing all this information, one of the things that I've purposely turned on here too is this column called Update Database. So those ones that are existing items that are in the database, I can just merely highlight or check and say, I think that needs to be updated. And when I run that command, Update Database, it'll go through and update the database, providing I have the database password and security to do that. So I talk about the, one of the things is a dynamic spreadsheet that lives on. Well, just from a simple standpoint of working with numbers and adding things on the fly, we look at that being able to update back to the database, providing you've got the current rights to do that with the admin. If you look at the basics of that in putting the numbers together, in addition to that, if you notice, there's items, assemblies, and models. And the way we look at this is they're just roads that drive the spreadsheet. So initially when I was over here in this list and dragging stuff in, those are merely items. If I open this assembly concept, you might be doing self-perform work, you might be doing construction management work, where you want to really kind of package everything together. Regardless of whether it's self-perform or not, you might have the assemblies concept that pulls everything together for think of it like a footing or a wall or a slab or any kind of activity that you need to pull multiple CSI trades together, and then you can answer a question. If you look here, items, assemblies, and models, this just works up or works down. Assembly would be an activity. Modeling concept allows us, hey, there isn't any drawings in front of us, but we want to do a conceptual estimate, how big, how many stories, and it's more of the project, and it sets in motion. Again, these are just mere roads between these lines to generate items into the spreadsheet. So if I open up the assembly, and I went into, let's say, a finishes, you'll see here's a questionnaire. Kind of like the whole spreadsheet concept, like the database concept, completely modifiable. The questionnaire can be your own. You can modify these questions. The whole concept with this is now the recipe of the company and how they go about business. And so if I said, hey, we got a wall that's 700 feet long, 12 feet high, don't quite understand some of these questions, we can even attach a picture, shows you what that's going to look like, and maybe some other verbiage here that maybe better understands. That could be as simple as taking a picture or putting an HTML or Word document that gives someone all kinds of backup and understanding. So as I fill out this information, you'll notice if I answer these questions, there's other questions that unravel. Height of sheetrock, maybe that's 10. 2 layers of rock, what's the chipboard code? Otherwise, I don't see those questions. So again, this can be, your way of thinking, and all we're doing is we're capturing that recipe and going through it. Sheeting code, sure we're going to add base. And again, as I fill out the interview, it drives all the items that are physically needed. Here is my cost. Here's my cost per square foot. I hit OK, and you'll notice now it drives that spreadsheet. Okay? Again, the assembly generates items. And those items in the spreadsheet, whatever level of detail you put in the database, is going to be driven this way. And so just a road to drive items. If you notice here, the other thing is I kind of compare this to Excel, is not only can I hit spacebar and the formula doesn't go away, again, I can change stuff like I was showing, but a lot of times you have companies that want to look at the data a little bit differently. Maybe it's by the old CSI. Maybe it's by a uniformat or a systems approach. And so maybe it's by building or floor. All we do here with these tabs, and they're definable by the customer, hey, I want to look at it in 95. I want to look at it in uniformat. And so that's what's nice about working with a dynamic database that feeds a spreadsheet is all that stuff can get programmed into the database, and when it falls into the spreadsheet, you can flip and flop data all day long. And again, they're definable by the user just by double-clicking and adding your code that you want to sort and resort. So again, as I'm working, and they're not just view tabs. I can work here, change a number, and it's instantly updated through all the tabs. Makes it kind of challenging in Excel to have all those different ways to look at the data and have to do all those three-way through the spreadsheet formulas. As you think of the items in assemblies like I was showing, really kind of handling, hey, anywhere from lump sums to doing some detailed takeoff, to really kind of working with a set of plans. And if I call this up, you'll see there's a whole bunch of different assemblies. This is a database you could start with. But the whole concept is whatever I call up, I have a question here, it drives the goodies, and I'm kind of working with a set of blueprints. When I mentioned earlier that there's 3 ways to drive the spreadsheet, 3 different ways of takeoff, items, assemblies, and models. The modeling allows you to open up the whole concept here is, hey, I don't have a set of drawings. And I want to come in here, and as I answer that interview, maybe this is for building A, now at this point, no drawings in front of me, maybe a sketch, maybe at best an elevation and a couple floor plans, and that's it. But the whole concept with this is that this is utilizing the same database that I've been showing, all those items and assemblies. And so the concept of our modeling is, hey, you can answer it, I want to see a picture, and as I fill out this information here, and as I enter this, the perimeter's 1,000 feet, we're talking 35 feet, and if you notice, and it's not only just answer how big I'll tell me stories, you can do some spec-driven stuff with this. There's 20 columns. And as I fill out this information, you'll see here that it's going to set in motion all the detailed assemblies. So it kind of gives you that working drawing level of takeoff at a conceptual. The beauty is, this is like a sheet of paper that I'm filling out. I can always come back and value engineer it, shrink the building, change the perimeter, go with a different system, boom, new number, and then at that point I can run a variance report showing everybody the changes that I've made from budget 1 to budget 2 or DD to CD. So at any rate, as I come in here, there's 2 storefront overhead doors, there's 1. And as I click on the question here, maybe it's going to be a 6-month project, I hit OK, and it captures, and now will drive all those assemblies that are going to be there on that project. So now if you notice here, there's all my assemblies, there's my quantities, there's the slab on grade. I didn't have to go grab line by line. I didn't have to go to the assembly. I just had to answer how big I'll tell me stories, some parameter stuff, and it set in motion all that detail. The beauty of our spreadsheet is we give you a lot of flexibility. I've been showing you how to change numbers here on the spreadsheet at the detail level. Our concept is the same at the conceptual level or at a high level. So maybe as you're doing this budget and you realize that, hey, it's going to be more like $8 a square foot on this. I don't really want to get into this, but I want to maybe present the amount of information that we've put together that the model drove. I can come over here and say make that $8, and it prorates all the detail for me, so it supports that. And when you print the report out, this red little triangle doesn't print, but it shows you that we've made an adjustment. The original was 211. We've made an adjustment almost 25%. So that's the whole idea is that whatever way we pull data and get it into the spreadsheet, they're just ways of getting this information into the spreadsheet, so now we can manipulate it, change it, add notes, and later be able to maybe update that back into the spreadsheet. So the concept with this is that we talk about as we create the estimate here, we can also click on totals and finalize the number. And if you look here, this works just like the spreadsheet, where Everything you're seeing here is kind of coming from the spreadsheet. Down here we can, just like changing a number, and these are some markups or add-ons that Timberline calls, and it's just a mirror. If you look, here's a handful of ones that I've put together that have come from this database. You have 999 markups or add-ons you can build, but here's an example of how that works. I can make that 15%. I can come over here and make that $70,000, and it back calculates the percentage. I can make things allocatable, which maybe you have some markups you want to show, like maybe you want to show the overhead, but you really want to hide these. As I come over here and change this to 12%, make these changes, I can turn this on, and when I say make those allocatable, this amount of money here, it's 209,912, all is going to be spread back through the estimate, and when I print the report out, what's really nice is that it hides those into the estimate, inflates the numbers, but would only show the overhead one and maybe my bid adjustment. Maybe I want to turn on the bid adjustment too and say, you know what, I want to go down by $10,000, and I can hit that. So all those here set up right now are ready to be sent back to the spreadsheet. And if you look here, I go back to, if I come over here to the columns, you'll see right now there's a cost per unit. I'm going to close this out for a moment. And if you look here, this cost per unit is everything coming from the database. But if I look at the grand unit price and the grand total, this is the amount of money that's being spread back through those items, right down to an item level, based on my totals adjustment. So as I come over here and click on totals and say, make this 30%, and maybe make this 15, hit OK, all of these numbers here have all changed. So the concept with this is that I can dynamically work in a totals page, change numbers, allocate money, be able to hide that information. But if you notice, everything starts from this whole concept of database spreadsheet. And then from there, we've got our assemblies and models that drive the spreadsheet. We click on the totals page, finalizes the number, and we kind of work at that capacity. Now, that's kind of about as far as I'm going to go with kind of the core basics. Now, a couple other things that we can utilize as well is that if I go back to Explorer for a minute, we talk about different reports that can be printed. It's got the ability, as I launch in, we've got, so if you think about the information that's in your database, all your hours and productions and material pricing, we got all kinds of reports that come with the system. Bill of materials will print out bill of materials and be able to send that off to vendors. Field reports are really nice because if your items support productions and man hours and also order quantities for materials, it can hold back all the labor, the pricing for your labor, the hourly rates, and also your material pricing, but give the field, based on any look or view or roll-up, based on what they need to do out in the field between quantities and total hours and production that they have. So a lot of information. There's a lot of spreadsheet type of reports that can be printed. The whole concept when I was showing the ability to hide columns and rearrange, not only can I save these layouts, it's almost like I guess you could say almost like a quicken concept where, hey, you've saved that view. Same concept with printing. As I open up the print, I can have different drop-downs of different ways that I want to print. And if I understand, the concept here is I've got columns turned on. If I go to report options, I can just click on pre-fill from spreadsheet, and what is physically turned on at that moment in time back here is what's going to print. If I like that, I can hit save layout and actually build another layout. And as I save those, I can come in here and say, hey, I want to use that view, and that's what's going to print. I can put logos in here, and I can put grid lines. There's a lot of different options. Above and beyond, and everything I've just shown for this moment is kind of canned with the system. We also have the ability to have a custom report writer that's tied to Crystal Reports. And the whole concept is, hey, I've done this estimate, And as I've done this estimate, maybe I even want to take it a step further and put some inclusions, exclusions, contract provisions, things like that. And you'll notice in this example, above and beyond a 16-division database, we had some inclusions and exclusions that we put in the database. Well, the whole concept is I can change stuff down at the bottom of the spreadsheet all day long, and when I go to print the report, we really want to take it a step further than just printing a spreadsheet report. I want to come in here, and when I launch this and print it out, now it's going to go through and I can print out clarifications, inclusions, the company we were working with on this particular job. Hey, we got different divisions, different regions, turn on different address. When I hit OK, you'll notice here's an example of what can be printed. Terms and conditions came from the estimate, inclusions, exclusions, right down to contract provisions. So there's a lot that we can do inside the program, and part of the reason is what you see that is the whole premise of the database. The database lends itself to be able to be very dynamic and work in different ways. Kind of the final piece of what I want to talk about is that third component where you go, hey, I'm working in a. I'm going to go back to the other estimate I was working on. If I call this up, and I'm going to give you a couple looks. One, when I'm printing anything out, the third component that I was talking about earlier was really a dynamic spreadsheet that lives on. Now, we've talked a little bit about some of that back in Explore, dump into Excel, taking those events and throwing it into Outlook. On top of that, when we're here in this spreadsheet, in addition to building up our estimate, if we happen to get the project, we can interface that to either Sage 300 or Sage 100, 300 being Timberline Accounting or Sage 100 being Master Builder, and be able to drive budgets, possibly purchase orders, subcontracts, that kind of information. There's some project management interface where we can even drive change requests. So again, you're working in this dynamic database that can kind of live on down through the different accounting modules that we integrate with. In addition to that, we have a scheduling integrator that allows you to dump stuff out into Microsoft Outlook, our project, or Primavera. The whole concept with that is, hey, I've opened up the scheduling, and at this point, if I go to setup, I want to generate per project. What level do you want to generate by? Is it by phase? Is it by assembly down to the item? Any one of those fields, and if I say OK, generate, remember the name of the project here. If I say generate, off it rolls. If I go into project, you'll see here, open that up, and it's downloaded all the list of activities at the level I wanted, and then I can put in the finish to start or start to start with 2 days lag. But it's depending on what's in your database, we can cost and resource load this schedule. So if I come back into estimating, same concept is true where we talk about different ways. Everything I've talked about today is really building up an estimate within the walls of the core app. We've got the ability to as we talk about different ways, can we move stuff out, whether it's in Excel, scheduling, into accounting platforms. But there's also ways that we are always looking at trying to find ways that where maybe this spreadsheet can be populated by other tools. We work with some applications that I referenced in my PowerPoint, on-screen takeoff from OnCenter, PlanSwift, some BIM tools. And the whole concept with that there is, hey, as you're doing a takeoff, why not connect it with the Timberline database and be able to drive a spreadsheet? And whether we're working with a PDF or whether we're working with a Revit file, let's dynamically kind of work in that world so that now we don't have to go into the database and manually drag and drop stuff or drive assemblies. So, a couple examples of this, and then I'm going to open it up to the floor. But if you look here, if I'm over here in on-screen takeoff, the takeoff's already been done. And again, I'm not spending a lot of time on this 2D stuff right now, but as I go through and I've got a list of things I quantify, and I'm in a PDF, I've got the ability, we have a thing called an integrator, and the integrator just marries up the Timberline database to work with the things that you're quantifying. And to cut to the chase, I have a project I've already done, and if you notice here, I open up, here's that project name, and I say take off the new estimate, give it a name. And when I hit OK, it just creates an estimate. When I hit OK, you'll go over here in the estimating program, you'll notice it drove that spreadsheet right down to every assembly that's been renamed based on those conditions. So I didn't have to go to the database and drag those individually, which is where I started. I have these assemblies that I've just trained my database to work with that 2D world. Same concept is true if we're working, again, I'm not diving real deep on this stuff. Same is true if I'm working with a Revit file. As I train the database to work with a Revit file, I can create a new estimate here. I have my forms of takeoff here, assembly, and as I've trained the database, I can click on auto takeoff here, and it goes off and looks at all those objects that are sitting in the Revit, and it's going through and generating a full-on takeoff that will drive not only quantities but also pricing. And you'll notice that's what it's doing here. And again, we've got a whole section on BIM, what is BIM, and how does Sage Timberline, drive information from the BIM world. All that is coming in a couple weeks. So again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time with this, but I think it's good, since I have you on the call, to see how dynamic. And at this point, I come in here and say open estimate in Timberline, and it just closes out the file, and it's going to open up that estimate. You'll notice here, it drove that spreadsheet right down to every component and area of work that's inside the BIM. So again, what I really wanted to try to focus on today was, kind of giving you the basics of what was inside that, creating that spreadsheet explorer, the estimating basics, database spreadsheets where everything starts, and then really talk about that dynamic spreadsheet that lives in lots of different places. And we only have an hour, 45 minutes to an hour, so I'm not going to dive too deep in all this stuff, but by having you on the call, you got a chance to kind of see how many places that data can live once it lands into the spreadsheet. So Tim, let's go ahead and open this back up and try to see if we can address any questions, and if not, we'll circle back and send people information and follow up with a call, both Jim and I. But go ahead, Tim.
All right, everybody, I'm going to go ahead and unmute everybody. So if anybody does have any questions, while I unmute everybody, Paul, we did have a question come in and asking about if the program is cloud-based. So while you answer that, I'm going to go ahead and start unmuting.
That's a great question. Currently, the concept of corporate is kind of stretching the rubber band concept. And what I mean by that is I showed a lot of different ways that we can drive the spreadsheet. And one of the efforts that's being made today is really kind of what we call separating the user interface from the engine, which now allows you to put the data on the cloud and have the user interface be an iPad, a browser under an Apple computer, lots of different places it can live. Currently, that's in development. Nothing has been released at this point on